Over the last few years, Darren and I have spent a lot of time talking to really high yield farmers from all around the world. And yes, we have a lot of discussion about seed and seed placement, planting, even weed control, disease control, those types of things. But fertility has really been at the top of the list. In fact, it's probably 80 or 90% of these conversations. It's been about fertilizer, and not just NP and K, a lot about micronutrients.
I would say more so about secondary and micronutrients than about NP and K.
Yep.
When you think about NP and K, there's a lot of research done on those, and there's a lot of experience. Many farmers run trials on one or more of those three big nutrients every year. So we've got a lot of data out there with those, and for the most part, we're doing an okay job managing them. Where we're really falling short, and we see it so often at Ag PhD when we get soil samples sent in from across the country and really around the world, I would say 50% of those don't even have micronutrients on them.
Right. So what we're going to talk about today is zinc and how you should manage zinc on your farm.
When we think about zinc, how is it commonly used on farms and how should it be used? Well, we see some people putting it on as a seed treatment. Now that's a little bit risky in some cases. Some of the nutrient applications we've put on seed have actually impacted germination in a negative way. But if you find a safe source and get it on the seed, there's nothing wrong with that. The problem with putting it on the seed is, number one, you can't vary the rate that you're putting on across the field. So if you've got an area that doesn't need zinc, and then you've got other areas that are really short, well, you can't vary it to accommodate those things. The other thing is, if you're putting zinc on the seed, you can only put so much on. So some people are getting a false sense of security that, well, I already have it on my seed treatment, I should be good. No, you're not. It's just a very, very small amount of zinc that you're getting out there. So it can be done in the seed. More commonly, we're seeing it done either in the furrow or in a 2x2 at planting time. And a couple of reasons why we're doing that. One, we're getting it down in the soil. Zinc is one that stays put pretty well. It doesn't leach down through soil as quickly as other nutrients do. And it's one that is prone, if you do have any erosion, for loss and movement within the field because it binds kind of tight to those soil particles. So getting it down in the soil, getting it in close proximity to the root system, both those factors are positive with zinc.
All right, a lot of times we'll talk about, as a bare minimum kind of level, we want to be 2 to 4 parts per million with zinc on a soil test. But the problem with that can be if you have very high levels of phosphorus. So I just look at our own farm. I believe we need to get to the kind of yield levels I want to get to, at least 100 parts per million of available phosphate. Well, a lot of farmers have been now talking about this ratio between zinc and phosphorus, and there is an absolute correlation there. Basically, if you overdo it with phosphorus, in effect, you can create an artificial shortage with zinc. So you have to try to keep those two things in ratio. So roughly, where do we want to be? Well, I would say approximately 8 to 1 to maybe 15 to 1, something like that. So just for simple math, let's use a 10 to 1 ratio. So if I'm going to be at 100 parts per million of available phosphorus, or phosphate, I should say, then what do I want to be at for zinc? Well, now I'm talking 10 parts per million for zinc. Well, what did I just say as a bare minimum? 2 to 4 parts per million for zinc. Now I'm saying I want to be all the way up to 10? That sounds crazy, doesn't it? Well, here's the way you can kind of verify this on your own farm. Start taking a look at plant tissue samples and just find out how much zinc is actually getting into the plant. What we found in our operation, and a lot of other high yield farmers around the country have found the same thing. Boy, if I have really high phosphorus levels, that 2 to 4 parts per million of zinc just isn't cutting it. We're not getting enough into the plant. You've got to get those levels higher.
Here's the other thing. The availability of zinc appears to impact other nutrients, most notably manganese. So many of these plant tissue tests Brian's talking about, we not only see zinc being short, but we see manganese being short at the same time. When we get the zinc into the plant, it seems to either pull the manganese with it or make a pathway that manganese gets in, because once we get zinc coming in, we see levels of manganese going up. Now on our farm, we've applied other nutrients in higher levels and found more manganese coming available to the plant, even though we didn't apply the manganese. So it's pretty interesting what's going on with some of these micronutrients, and a lot of it starts with zinc.
All right, so what is your course of action here? What should you be doing on your farm? The first thing is soil test. And when you soil test, get a complete soil test. So make sure you are getting zinc levels. Then be taking a look at variable rate fertilizer. What we found with zinc is on eroded side hills or even eroded hilltops to some degree, that's where you have the most deficiency because, like Darren said earlier, zinc doesn't really move down in the soil profile. So it's very common for us on our own farm where we have some rolling hills to have terrible deficiencies in the hilltop and especially the side hill, but down in the valley, the zinc isn't too bad. So variable rate makes a whole lot of sense. And then the other thing is, take a look at doing at least a low rate with your planter, maybe a 2x2 or something like that. You can use a little bit in furrow, but you got to be real careful about the rate and the source. And then finally, monitor your plants as you progress through the season. Do plant tissue analysis. You certainly can do some foliar feeding or even possibly side dressing with zinc. So do everything you can to get your zinc levels up in the plant, and you should find overall healthier crop and higher yields.
One other thing you'll need to improve to get better yields is weed control. We'll show you how to stop our weed of the week coming up later in the show.